Good morning, and thank you for coming. Looks like we have a pretty good, let's see, I think we have a quorum. Do we have a quorum? Whoever,
Yes, you do.
do we want to roll call it just to make sure, or how do you want to do it for public record?
We can do a roll call. Thomas Campini,
Here.
Joe Falzone,
Here.
Stu Glass,
Here.
Chris Hendricks,
Here.
Mike Little. I do not see him present. Kelly McGee,
Here.
Thomas Stratton. I do not see him present, and Greg Wilson.
Here.
There you go. Floor is yours.
Excellent, thank you. So welcome to one of our quarterly meetings. I want to thank Dwayne and staff for yesterday. We had a kind of a preview meeting just to get everything in order and make sure I knew what I was doing. Kind of fun. So are there any agenda revisions before we get started? Anybody? None being seen, let's go on to the next one. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
I'll move.
Second.
Do we
So
have
just to be clear, that was Tom that moved and Chris that seconded?
Sure.
any discussion or corrections?
Yeah.
None being heard. All those in favor of adopting, please signify by saying aye or approving.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved or so approved. Public comments. Anything?
Oh, we have nobody from the public yet, so we can move right on past.
I was kind of expecting a visitor from the public. So none being heard, let's go on to old business. And I hope everybody's had a chance to look at the strategy for financing the CCMP. I think it's an excellent document. Very impressed. You know, it's 43 pages. It's really well written and easy to understand. So with that being said, Dwayne, you want to give us an update?
Yeah, very much so. And I want to also, kind of tell you what the timeline is. So first, I want to thank Kathy Hill. This document was twice as long as this when I gave my draft to Kathy, and had a lot of what I would call kind of financial and public funding kind of generalities. And she absolutely chopped this down to what I think is a really readable document. And the goal of this document is not to be prescriptive. The governor and the legislature don't like to be told, what pots of money, they should be pulling money. Neither do the cities and the counties. And so the goal of this document is really threefold. First and foremost, we were hoping that when we finally adopt this, and we're looking at maybe November at our next set of meetings, that it'd be a useful document to any of our partners and stakeholders who are looking for dollars from public or private sector entities. The second is to kind of put a line in the sand to let everybody know that, if we're expecting $4 to $5 billion in infrastructure, and one of the things that I still am not sure I've done appropriately with this yet, or at least correctly, is we don't know what the biological response will be. So we may see the recovery of the lagoon way earlier than this $4 to $5 billion of, potential need out there, because a lot of it's infrastructure. But we wanted to just lay on the record that if we're looking at $4 to $5 billion to improve our communities socially, economically, and Indian River Lagoon, that it's going to take $250 million a year to get there over 20 years, and to just set a sense of the scale of the need. Because we are hearing repeatedly everywhere I go, it's really a two-phase response. Number one, we can't afford it, and number two, that, there's lots of priorities. And the real answer is, yes, there's lots of priorities, you can afford it. It just depends on how big a bite you want out of this apple, you know, at any given time. And so, because so much of this is wastewater, roads, stormwater, you know, it isn't just a lagoon initiative. And the third is more administrative. EPA likes to see a separate document to address these issues, in addition to what we've done in the CCMP. And I want you to know, if you're not already aware, we are the only comprehensive conservation management plan in the country that actually has a project list for restoration and a target cost. So all the others dance around these issues in generalities. We have gotten pretty specific here. So this is what I'd like from you all, and Greg and Stu, some of you have read it, but between now and August 15th, where I need your help is finding gaps or inaccuracies in this document. You know, I know Chris has got a lot of expertise and experience with the federal government. Try to, you know, mine as many non-traditional money sources as possible. I've taken some liberties in this, individual liberties. We'll see if they create support or controversy, you know, like basically stating we should have a pilot study, you know, for a 21st century wastewater treatment plant somewhere, called for a new federal agency like DARPA to do advanced technology in water, energy, and resilience technologies. But take a hard look at it for me. And then each of you, when you feel comfortable, it might be today, just send us an email, you know, and send it to me with a CC to Kathy. It just says, you know, we've read it. Here's what we think, you know, you should adjust or change, or here's an addition, or maybe it's just we love it, you know, or we hate it. My plan is to incorporate 100% of your comments directly into this. And so I will take whatever you say, bring it into this document, and as soon as, you know, either we have 100% response by email from the subcommittee, or we hit a deadline date of August 15th, at that point, we will send this out as a draft from staff and the finance subcommittee to the entire management conference and others as well. I've got a few economic folks I know who have said they'd be willing to take a look at it. We'll leave it in review and taking general comments till the end of September, maybe early into October, and then we will make revisions as appropriate, come back to, you know, this subcommittee and the entire management conference at our 1st of November meetings. And if we are all in consensus, we'll move to adopt this as our strategy for financing a CCMP. So that's kind of how I'm seeing this move forward to closure on November. And the reason November is important to me, I'm going to give you a little bit of a briefing in my right at the end in final comments. Having this document in hand going into both the congressional activities for appropriation and reauthorization, some of that's happening now, and then especially as we're moving towards Tallahassee, I think gives us all the ability to make a case that at the very least, try to hold funding. Even we know COVID is going to have a massive impact, the 2022 state budget, but if we can kind of hold the line of this year, or at least not take massive cuts to zero, where we can at least keep moving this ball forward, you know, we can use this document as a little bit of a backup to say, look, you know, we may not get 25 million from the legislature, but, you know, we'll take 5. You know, don't zero us out so we lose momentum. So with that, I'll just open up for questions and discussion.
Well, Dwayne, I forwarded this to all the members of the Space Coast League, which are all
Awesome.
municipalities. I also sent to the Florida League of Cities, to the lobbying team, because they're pretty involved when it comes to appropriations work. Haven't had a response back from any of them yet, because I just did it yesterday. But I expect I'll get a response back from their environmental lobbyist, who's also our deputy general counsel.
No, that's fantastic. In fact, I was thinking I probably ought to send a copy. I was going to wait till August, but over to Tax Watch, and see if somebody from Tax Watch wants to take a swing at it. Any other comments, suggestions?
Tom, could you do the same thing for, for Treasure Coast? You're on mute. Hey, Tom, you're on mute. We didn't hear you. Push your space bar. There you go.
Sorry. I said I'd send it out to Patricia today, and she'll send it out to everyone.
Thank you. Anybody else have a thought?
Wayne and Kathy, thank you so much for doing this. I mean, this is a huge effort, and we'll do our best to give you some good comments.
Yeah, I thought it was a tremendous undertaking. I thought it was really a very visionary document that you folks put together. And, from the standpoint that it was inclusive of government and NGOs and all parties at all levels, from the federal right on down to the local. I thought that was fantastic. And I also noted in that note back to Dwayne, the whole aspect of innovation being involved, like he just mentioned, that visionary wastewater treatment plant at Kennedy Space Center suggestion. I mean, things like that. It's not only deals with today's situation, but it brings in, what could we do to help make this overall picture better for the lagoon? I thought it was really tremendous.
Excuse me.
Oh, thanks, everybody. One heads up I wanted to alert you to. If you notice on this document, I'm looking for the page, we just got our updates on the project listing from Tetra Tech. And so that table 1 on page 15 was updated June 2020. And so we've taken the liberty, because we have not yet gone to printing on the CCMP. And so we've updated the CCMP, even though it was adopted in 19, we're putting a statement in it that we've updated with the new list. And you notice that costs, now we're up over 1,000 projects, at $3.8 billion. And so it shows the level of need. There's a couple things still missing in this that I found after the fact, and one of them, and so I just want to let you know where I'll be taking a couple quick edits. Want to make sure that there's a reference to the blue economy. I want to make sure that there's a specific reference, and I'll tell you why in a moment, to the fact that we pay dues every year to the Association of National Estuary Programs. At one point, a number of years ago, those dues were forbidden by our previous host agency, and that is our lobbying firm in Washington, D.C., who's making sure we keep our money. And it was just an oversight on my part not to mention that in the recommendations. I want some codification of our IRLNEP relationship, and it's an investment that's really important. And then the other thing that I didn't have time to do, I wanted to get this out, is Dan, Kathy, and I, and Kayleen we're assembling the database on license plate sales since day one. And I'll add that into that section on license plate. So sales have gone up. They'll probably level off or drop at COVID. But our sales have been going down for the last 25 years. And so we're having a discussion with St. John's right now and maybe transferring that plate to us. And so stay tuned on that one, and we may have some information for council by Friday on that. I'm just waiting to make sure we don't upset anybody, in this discussion. But, we could sell more plates if we were advertising and updated the graphics. So with that, Mr. Chair, that's all I have on this.
Thank you. I do want to make one comment. I really think it's important that we have the list of projects, because that puts it into reality.
Mhm.
And I appreciate that you did that. Any other comments? Any recommended actions from anybody?
Sounds good to me.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to throw out a possible consideration for you all, and it doesn't need to be for this meeting, but, we have a contract with Tetra Tech, which at the end of, this list basically ends. We also have them under a contract. I'm starting to think that we may want to think about extending that Tetra Tech contract, just so we are updating this list, maybe not annually, but I'm almost thinking annually to biannually, that we probably should keep this list current. And Tetra Tech has been our contractor. If you all think that that's something we should be considering, we can bring it to council in the November meeting. But I agree with you, Stu. I think having a list that's active, that's current, it's, if the cities have new projects coming online, that we probably need to keep this list as a recurring living document that every year is getting updated. Projects get done, they get pulled off the list, and new projects get on. So if, think about that, we'll put that on the agenda for the November meeting.
I agree with you. We should have a list that's at least done annually, but better if it's done every 6 months.
What we found, Tom, from our partners is just asking them for projects is a heavy lift. And so I think probably every 6 months, you just don't see that much happening. But I think if we have this standing service agreement with Tetra Tech, and I would argue that we could almost sole source it now because they've already done the work for the last 3 years, that we need to just work more closely with the 38 cities and the 7 counties. So they know every time they get a new project on a CIP plan, as soon as they adopt it, put it on their plan, they should be calling us and just saying, add it to your plan. So where this is just a communication network that's super efficient.
I think it's a great idea.
Even a harder lift.
Kelly, I'm sorry.
I think it's a great idea to keep Tetra Tech on. And, maybe if we continue the internship program with the IRL Council, that could be something, that could be a project for an individual to reach out to each of the cities and each of the groups and follow up. If we hadn't heard from them, chase it down a little bit.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's get to new business.
All right. Actually, we got one more on old, and it's really quick. So last meeting, everybody okayed are moving forward with the RFPs for 2022. The only thing we didn't do is to establish kind of the target for each of those 4 categories. And so we wanted to wait to see where we were on the 21, budget, what COVID was looking like. And so we're going to move forward business as usual and do the same targeted levels as last year. So we'll be going to council recommending up to 500,000 for the water quality, up to 200,000 for habitat restoration, up to 200,000 for the community guided restoration, and up to 100,000 for the science and innovation, which is exactly the targets. Ultimately, this will be decided, based on, your recommendations and board direction after that RFP, gets reviewed and ranked. So the requested action is, to go ahead and move forward with the same levels as last year, as I just described.
Thoughts?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion.
Sounds very reasonable.
I also concur. Let's have a vote. All in favor, please signify.
Aye.
Opposed? Guess it carries. How do we want to present this? Do we want to present it today, or you just need it for minutes?
When you go ahead and, talk to the full board, a few minutes, just let them know that you're recommending, those levels. And I'll do a similar brief to the whole board.
Okay. I was making a note, so I'm sorry I don't multitask as well as I used to. So for new business, Dan, you're up.
All right, so we're just going to kind of go over a quick little update of the financials. Not a whole lot has happened in this quarter. Probably the big news is that we finished 5 projects this quarter. So on your first project list, the channel denitrification treatment project from Vard County finished. We also had the project with Hub SeaWorld finished. The West Wabasso Septic to Sewer 2 finished. Reed Canal with Bethune-Cookman finished. The UCF's resiliency plan finished. And one other one. Brevard Zoo's project finished back in, and FDP's finished. So FDP's in 1819 finished, and Brevard Zoo's Restore Our Shores is now complete.
Question?
Any questions on the projects that were completed, or the project list, just the simple version?
Sounds like a busy quarter.
This next one's going to be even busier once everybody finishes, but we're trying to also get a sense of how many projects are going to be continuing into no cost extensions due to COVID. And it seems like, from what I'm hearing, it's going to be upward around 70% of our projects are going to be going into a second year because of complications due to COVID. So I'll know a lot better in our next meeting, but preliminary looks like a lot of projects are going into a second year.
Daniel, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so down on page 7 of your project list,
Mm-hmm.
the
The actives or the project, the simple list?
it's probably, can't tell the actives, under actives.
Okay.
Or do you want to go over that first?
Yeah, we can go over it. That's fine.
Okay. So under the grant writing, it says for its list 2019, and the amount invoiced through the end of the last quarter, it's all zeros.
You're looking at the quarterly cash. Yeah, so this is 2019 revenue.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at,
Because if later on it's listed, it looks like it's correct. Page 11.
you're looking at the detail report. Okay, so the way that works is it's 2 different grants on with EPA.
Okay.
So the reason on the quarterly expenditures it's shown as 0 is because we haven't expended the former EPA. So under former EPA work plans, there's an amount there. It fits under that category. So we have former EPA work plans from audit on page 2 of the quarterly cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
The amounts that you guys, that's on the detail report has been
Right.
spent through that. So you guys haven't even touched the budget allocated for 1920 in grant writing yet. We're still working off old funds from 1819.
Okay. And then on page 11, same thing, it says withdrawn for years 2017, 2018.
So we budgeted in those years, that was $80,000 between the three grant writers. And we reallocated that money back in 2019 in a budget amendment to additional projects because we still hadn't touched the 50,000 from the 1819.
Gotcha.
So because we weren't using it, we didn't want to just sit in there. So
Exactly.
the 2017-18 funds were from strategic. The 2018-19 were EPA, and the EPA funds have a deadline for use because of the grant expiration date of this year, September 30, 2020. So we wanted to work off those. And as you know, we're starting to get a lot more interest, as you've probably noticed too,
Right.
that you know the grant writers are getting more use. So we should complete our former EPA work plan amount, no problem. And then I anticipate in the next month or two starting to work on that 1920. And you have a 2021 budget amount as well coming forward. So there is still quite a bit of money in that pot.
Gotcha.
Just trying to show each one differently is kind of hard to do.
Yeah, I wasn't clear that they were different pots of money. Thank you for that clarification.
Any other comments? I can't imagine Chris doesn't have a comment.
So I'm just going to go back into the quarterly cash flow. What you might see that it's pretty interesting for this one is before in quarters prior, it was just the 1920 year that we were looking at. And since we've had our audit, I brought that audited amount. So we're actually looking at everything now. You know, it's not broken out specifically. I kind of rolled some of them in together where if you look on the second page of that quarterly cash, you have the former EPA work plans kind of all rolled together, what was left from audit. On the very top, it does say general funds audited balance. So that was brought into part of this revenue. So we're actually working off everything that's active right now on this quarterly cash flow instead of just that single budgeted 1920 year.
Dan, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say it works well with our budget amendment. So if you look at our budget amendment and all the numbers on that, they all line up very well.
Dan, could you quickly go over why we have the 69,000 in contingency reserve?
That is the amount every year that is not part of a specific line item, such as you know, an admin cost or an admin service. And because of the way we balance the budget based on our anticipated revenue, that is the amount in reserve. Initially, it was for you know some kind of hurricane destruction, trying to get back up and running, or if there's some unexpected costs that we need to take care of. That was kind of that reserve amount that we have. I know Dwayne's been considering, you know, with this COVID crisis, you know, keeping the program afloat should something happen. So it's just the balance that we have to balance the budget out every year.
Okay, any questions from anyone? Wow.
Stu, before you go on, I just wanted to take this moment. I won't have this conversation in the full board to thank Dan. The good news, which we will be officially on the record on Friday, is that our 2021 grant award from EPA has been accepted and awarded. And so the EPA federal funds are solid for 2021. And that, as far as we know, we are pretty sure that we will have 100% funding from our partners going in to the fiscal year in October 1. We are, and Dan has been working diligently we are on a 5-year grant cycle with EPA. When you close those out at the end of 5 years, and Dan, remind me, I think it's 90 days. You have 90 days after that closeout date. And if you have not expended those US Treasury dollars, you lose them. And so we had been working on kind of the pathway on our last grant that, we would be closing out, the year, and EPA kind of arbitrarily started a brand new year. So Dan is having to adjust dollars now, and this goes to Kelly's question, in 2 different grants with EPA that are overlapping. So our last year of what would have been the 5th year in our old grant is actually now the 1st year in the new grant. So we're juggling those Treasury dollars. About 2 weeks ago, we had a phone call or an email at like 11:30, and it basically said, the EPA, because of COVID, is going to extend a 1-year grant contract, no cost extension to any of the NEPs that were coming up to closure. And our closure is September 30th. And they gave Dan till end of business that same day to put together the entire report and budget in order to satisfy the documentation that they wanted on that closeout. And so he did a remarkable job in no turnaround time whatsoever.
2.5 hours.
Yeah, 2.5 hours. And Chris will laugh because he knows how this works. It goes up to EPA headquarters, and then nobody does anything with it. In fact, the person who demanded it same day was out of
2
the
days
office
later.
the whole rest of the week. And so I just wanted to let you all know that those are the things that we are often faced with that you just never see. This federal oversight side of our job is way more than most of you ever get to see on a daily basis. But that one was one that, we just shook our heads and, told Dan to put his head down on the ground and go for it. And so we are in good shape going into the fiscal year. And in a minute, I'll tell you where we are on the federal side. But right now we're looking good. But yeah, Dan, he's been working hard to get that closeout. We're not going to leave a single dollar on the table for the U.S. Treasury to claw back.
Good job.
Excellent.
The general
Chris?
the general fund audited balance. I guess my thing was muted all the way up to just now. That $2 million, that all that money is obligated, right, for projects or accounts payable?
Correct.
That's
So,
not new money for new projects.
right. So when we audit, that's the general fund, that's arm audit. We reconcile that in a budget amendment, which we did last meeting. It was 2020-02. I had to identify every project that was rolling forward, either as an EPA fund, a license plate fund, or a strategic project. And, I put that in my narrative of that budget amendment. So that's where all that money kind of rolls in. So if you're looking in that quarterly cash flow, you got former EPA work plan from audit, the strategic projects from audit, license plate from audit, all that adds up to that $2 million.
So you got about $1.4 million to spend on new projects this year, roughly. Taking out the administrative costs, you got about $1.4 million. You got $2 million left, and you spend about $600,000 on administration, so you got about $1.4 million for new projects. Correct?
Correct. Yep.
More or less. And 70% of the projects have installed because of COVID-19, right?
It's about from this current year. The ones that were going on former years are still chugging along pretty good. But the ones that we're doing this 19-20 year, they're all looks like, so yeah, our fund balance next audit is probably going to be even higher.
Yeah. So I think based on what I've talked in River County and even my beach programs, where we're probably going to get $5-7 million back because we can't spend it, can't get people to authorize us to put sand on the beach. And the states doesn't seem like they're going to give us any beach money next year. So we're kind of concerned about our beach program. But I think on the 1.4 million, when you go out with the RFPs, you might want to give a little bit more contribution, less projects, more contribution, because I think the counties are going to be strapped to do a lot of these projects. And if we want to stay alive and want to do meaningful work, I think we're going to be asked to contribute more next year. That's just my thought.
Well, our balance, that money has already been allocated. It's not
Yeah,
like,
I know. You only got about 1.4 million to spend next year on new projects. On that, I'm just saying, in your new RFPs, you might be asked to give a higher contribution than we've done in the past to help local governments institute projects. I think that's coming, from what I've heard. And I think that's okay. I'm just throwing that out as something that's probably going to happen.
Any other thoughts? Okay, none being heard. Kayleen, want to talk about our calendar? No. Okay.
Of course, I live to talk about calendars, Stu. You asked, so I had to answer. So pretty simply, you all got it in your packet. We followed the formulations that we use for this calendar year's meetings. We're proposing leaving our Tuesday meetings as they are, with you guys first, management second, STEM third. We just need to know that everybody's good with those dates. They're good with the time scheduled. There's no conflicts. We did our due diligence. We went out and made sure that there were no government entities that had meetings on the days of our board of directors, but I know Tuesdays is kind of an iffy day for some people. So we just need feedback from everybody, make sure you're good with it.
Anybody?
Sounds good.
Want a motion?
Do we need a motion? I don't believe we do.
I don't think we need one.
Okay.
The only conflict I see is the Brevard County Commission has Tuesday meetings. I don't know what they're going to do next year. New chair, there'll be I'm sure, a new plan. So.
Yeah, we don't have any of the commissioners on our Tuesday meetings. The only time that would come into effect, I believe, would be, say, for instance, if you needed to make a presentation in front of the council or the commission. But we can adjust accordingly if that, is needed.
Okay. Okay, how about some final comments? Anybody in committee first?
It's just an awesome job.
I must concur. I totally concur. Staff.
Mr. Chair, I've got a couple quick comments, and I'll go into more detail in the full board, the management board meeting. But we're going to be pushing really hard to get the word out that 25 million that was just allocated by the governor in the budget will be available through an competitive RFP to the cities, the counties, partners. We're expecting that RFP maybe to be completed sometime in the next 3 weeks. And so we'll make sure that, we're making everybody aware, when that's first released. So those dollars will have a 1-year, timeline on it. I'm not sure how they're going to handle the match. I'm kind of thinking there's going to be a match. And I think Chris's comment was very appropriate. And so what I'd like to do, and I may bring this up, I don't need management conference support on this, I think officially, but I'm thinking that maybe we tweak the language in our RFPs for 2022, rather than having mandatory minimums on match, maybe we, recommend that match, but we judge each project accordingly. So I need to think about that, but I think Chris's point is well taken that, our goal is to get the available dollars on the street, and if we're sitting on dollars in 2022 that are available, we don't want to make the the entry for our stakeholders so onerous that we're not distributing those dollars effectively. So that's number one. So let me think about that. I don't think we need to address that right now. We'll have more than enough time in our November meeting. And the second one is I just want to give you a quick update on the federal side. So we are in full play in Congress right now at really two different levels of reauthorization. And so literally we may see a jump of our reauthorization bill this week. So last night I had it right, in fact, after our phone calls, Stu, got on board with Rubio's former staffers and our folks from the Panhandle. So here's where we are in the nutshell, and I'll go into more detail at our next meeting. We are in the WRDA bill as an add-on in the Senate. It looks like they're going to jump past the Senate full committee, the floor debate, and go straight to conference. And that could happen actually this week. Our reauthorization is not in the House bill. And so we're going to be really watching closely this week to make sure that the leadership, both House and Senate, should WRDA go to conference, that our reauthorization is in that conference discussion. It's a little trickier, if the House takes control and then the Senate follows the House, because we're not in their bill in the WRDA add-on. But we've got backup to this with our standard process. So we still have Senate Bill 3171 with bipartisan support and House Bill 4044 with bipartisan support. So we're hoping, all things equal, that we will be looking at a reauthorization that will double the potential money that Congress would appropriate to the national estuary programs and get us up to $1 million. We don't anticipate an appropriation bill before November. They're going to do CRs, continuing resolutions, we think. But just wanted to let you know, we are in full play at the federal level. And I'll have a little more detail at our full meeting. So I'm real worried about state and local support on the revenue side in 2022. I'm guardedly optimistic that we're looking pretty good as we move forward with the federal side. Should we wind up, and I will be recommending to council to start the 2022 budget early in November, and we'll have that conversation with you all. We're going to have some options on the table for you to look at. Dan and I are already working on it. And the nuclear option would be, we lost all of our state funding, all of our county funding, and could hold the federal. What would our budget look like if we had to bridge year, maybe 2 years, where basically most of the federal funding would be going to hold this office together, and what programs that we could support that are mission critical, so we don't lose the NEP, in this post-COVID world. So we'll keep you posted as we're moving forward. But we have been doing that strategic planning, already in anticipation for what might come. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we're getting close on time, but any final comments from anyone?
All I can say, my friends up at EPA echo what our boss just said, but they're concerned about November elections having consequences, and you can read into it what you want. It's the environmental issues are not on the table on both platforms, but it's going to be scary. It's going to be a rough ride.
It really is. And Chris, the good news that I've got right now, it's the best news I can really give, is that so far the NEPs have gotten bipartisan support. So Marco Rubio actually reached across the aisle to Democratic Senator Whitehouse out of Rhode Island and co-sponsored the Senate reauthorization bill. But as you know, a lot of times they'll reauthorize, and it's like, look how You know, look how much money we reauthorized, and then you turn around in appropriation and you don't get it.
Well,
So we've got work ahead.
I think the NAP programs will survive, no question. I just think it's the funding to support the projects the next year or two at the federal and state level. It's going to be really, really, really tough.
Agreed.
So depends on what happens in the elections. Let's just put it that way. I want to be politically correct.
Okay, if no more comments, is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Any-
moved.
Do
Second?
we, second,
Thank you very much. I really appreciate everyone's
do we
participation.
just stay on or do we have to sign in again?
Unfortunately, you're gonna need to log off of this one, and as soon as I get off this one, I will go activate the other one.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. Good to
Great
see
job.
y'all.
See you soon.
Good to see you. Stay healthy.
You too.